question is, the lingering animosity that exists today as a fallout of not only this battle, but of the Civil War, how valid and real do you think this notion is? And what I was going to ask you, and then I'd like each of you to kind of answer this, you speak about, in your introduction, the culture despisers, Civil War culture despisers. Kind of hiss at them, I think, maybe correctly. Who are they? Tell us about what today is with battle and war. Linda, why don't you start off, since this is a question for you?
Okay. Well, I think that, can you repeat the very first part of it for me, please?
Yeah, the lingering animosity that exists today as a fallout of the battle of the Civil War.
Yes.
How valid is that?
Well, I think that there is, of course, it all depends on who you talk to. I think that I assume they're talking about racial animosity.
I'm not sure if it's animosity
or
racial or
North
more
and South,
toward war.
Okay.
Or more toward North and South. She didn't make it, or he didn't make it.
Okay.
Answer the way you wish.
All right, I will. I mean, I think that in my experience in doing the research for this book, it just opened my eyes so much more to what slavery was. And I think it's so easy for all of us today, regardless of where you live, regardless of your background, regardless of your skin color. I think it's so easy for us to oversimplify the war and oversimplify slavery. It's extraordinarily complex. And again, this is a microhistory, so I'm only looking at it in this one little region, the northeast corner of Louisiana, in 1863, pretty much. And even within those parameters, it's extremely complex. One of the things that fascinated me is the diary of Elizabeth Meade Ingraham, who lived near Port Gibson in Mississippi. And she writes about the reactions of her slaves as the Union Army is coming through. And no one behaved the same way. You have one slave who still is, quote-unquote, loyal, who's still waiting on her. And then you have others who are out of there just as soon as the Yanks march by. And so I think that all of that complexity is still with us today. And I think that, most of the racial issues that still divide this country go back years and years and years and years. And so I think that's one of the reasons why I think the Civil War is such an important time period for us to talk about and for people to learn about and to discover. There's just such complexity there that still resonates today.
Oh, yes. 150 years is really not that much.
Right.
So you talk about those culture despisers. That's, of course, of war is what you're saying. But you also speak about emancipation, and some have said that where is emancipation in that book? But you say that it was really for the Union.
Well, one of the difficulties when you're dealing with a specific incident like Gettysburg is that you bump into a number of brick walls. If not of outright questioning, then certainly a reluctance. For many historians, I'm talking about academic historians, people who are working within academia, the culture of academia is very shy of appearing to put any laurels on the brow of war. First, because it's politically questionable. Secondly, war for what? What have American wars been about? They've often been involved in some very questionable things. And then there's the whole sense that real history is something that is the product of long-term tectonic changes in society, and to rest historical change on the back of single incidents, like a great battle, is somehow to do history in an antique and naive way. The really sophisticated way to do history is to look at it in this longue durée, in this long view. Part of it, sort of a Marxist conceit that we're looking for the conflict of classes, and therefore we shouldn't really be focusing upon battles. That's much too specific. Or it's a Tolstoy sort of conceit, as in War and Peace, in which Tolstoy dismisses the great generals, the people who think that they are in charge of events, because what's really happening are these long-range, long-term changes. Well, from whatever source it comes, there's a distinct reluctance to be seen talking about war, either for fear of glorifying it, or for fear of emphasizing the wrong kind of change in history. So for academics, if you want to write about the Civil War, and there's lots of academics who do, you have to find, shall we say, a more culturally respectable way of writing about the Civil War. And so we find ways of writing about the Civil War that will emphasize other things that we think, within the cultural milieu of academia, are going to make the Civil War and writing and talking about the Civil War a little bit more palatable. When we go in before that hiring committee for that first tenure track job, you want to be able to impress these other historians that you are like them, you will fit in, you deserve a place in their department. You do not want someone pointing a finger and saying, is all you're really interested in is a lot of soldiers and battles? That is the question that tells you that your candidacy is probably history, literally.
So the Civil War continues in academia amongst themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's good to know.
As a matter of methodology,
Yeah.
and as a matter sometimes of ideology. But yes, yeah.
A quick off-the-wall question, because I'm just curious. Is Schimmelpfennig's pigsty still there? You'll have to read the book to find out what happened to Schimmelpfennig, the Union general, as
Well,
he was
I think
trying to get out of the way of the Confederates on the first day.
I think, Dan, you have to be very careful. I didn't use the word pigsty.
No, you didn't. I did.
And some people have said that what Schimmelpfennig was hiding in was a pigsty. That's probably not really the case. He was hiding in what was really the back lot of the Garlack property on Baltimore Street. And I've seen this described, and it is still there, yes. It's a stream culvert. And Catherine Garlack discovered Schimmelpfennig there when she went out to shoot chickens. So that he was hiding in a pigsty, well, I think that was in large measure a way that people had afterwards of sneering at this German. Because Schimmelpfennig, take 3 quick guesses, he's a German. He's a Prussian. And the prejudice, the nativist prejudices of the day, treated Germans very, very severely. So if this general was going to hide, and he was a German, well, where else would a German hide but in a pigsty? But understand, in the 19th century, the people who were understood to be the great military people, the great military nation of the world, that was France. Germans were seen as being these puffy-minded, idealistic, philosophical, musical, culturally absent-minded people who spoke in impossibly long sentences with impossibly polysyllabic words. Germans were impractical. They were dreamy. So, of course, they wouldn't make good soldiers. If you wanted to model yourself on a great soldier, you looked around for a Frenchman. If it was French, it had to be good. That's why there are Zouave units.
Yeah.
And those, what we look to our eyes as being these horribly impractical uniforms, who would appear on a battlefield looking like they were actually an apprentice for the circus. That's what a Zouave uniform looked like. But you have to understand that a Zouave, Zouave is like the special forces. To dress as a Zouave was like putting on a Delta Force beret. It was cool.
Well, we in Chicago know that. We had Elmer Ellsworth here, so
Absolutely.
positively we're with you on that. Now, speaking of these newly minted black soldiers who came in, what did the Confederate soldier reveal afterward of the dishonor of having to fight such a being?
Well, interestingly enough, the Confederate general, Henry McCulloch, actually praised the black troops at Milliken's Bend. And he kind of poo-pooed the white troops that were there. There was a small number of men from the 23rd Iowa, which was an all-white unit. And I talk about, were they cowards, were they not? But according to McCulloch, they ran like whipped curs. But the African Americans there fought with great courage, and so that's quite a compliment coming from McCulloch, from a Confederate general. And even in some of the letters that I've found, everybody was pretty much, North or South, was pretty much astonished that these men had acquitted themselves so well. They were overwhelmed, but for the most part, they stood and fought the best they could. It was lots of hand-to-hand combat, bayonets, clubbed muskets, very violent. And as you can see on the cover, here's a picture right here about what it looked like. And so, I think it's a surprise. It's one of those surprising things. So
I'm showing The Black Phalanx, a book on the African American in the Civil War, and of course Milliken's Bend is in this. In fact, I think they stole your cover.
yes.
And there is your cover. Let's put the two together if we can. And here's a chapter on Milliken's Bend back then as well. Lorenzo Thomas, I'm giving away something here, but he became a recruiter. He was one of those who signed on this commission as AAG of the Army. And so I'm giving you part of the Artifact Whisperer question answered, but there it is. And Lorenzo Thomas was there. And of course, he was a recruiter of the black and African American soldiers. How did the other soldiers in the Army take to that? And how did there was enough racism in the North as well as the South that to be fighting alongside and giving honor to them, perhaps for places that they did honorable things. How did they come around?
Well, again, you have this diversity of responses. Adjutant General Thomas came to the Mississippi Valley around this time of year, in April and in May, and he was recruiting the white officers that would then in turn go out and recruit the black soldiers. So it was kind of a hierarchy, and so the white officers, for the most part, were experienced soldiers. They had been, in the Army for a couple years by this point. Some of them were veterans of Shiloh, and it was a mixed bag because some of them took the job just because it was a promotion opportunity, just because of the money. And these were promotions several grades up. You would have a sergeant who got promoted to captain. And so the prestige and the money, and at the time, black troops were not only a new thing, but it was assumed that they would perform garrison duty. So what's not to like about getting a promotion, getting a whole lot more money a month, and sitting back with a cushy job, And so, so there were some people who were interested in it for that. Mm-hmm. There were certainly some abolitionists. Isaac Shepard, perfect example. He was sort of in charge of the African Brigade that day. And then you have other people. I tell the story about one incident with the 10th Illinois Cavalry. And they were in the same area, and they were supposed to provide, serve as scouts for the infantry units at Milliken's Bend. And one day, one of the guys from the 10th Illinois got drunk. He went over into the camp of the USCTs and started hitting a guy, kicked him where it hurts. And Colonel Shepard comes out, and there's this big blow up over all this. The same man from the 10th Illinois had attempted to rape several women, African American women who were there nearby, and I don't want to repeat what kind of words were going on. So you have the extremes, the abolitionists, the people that just didn't want this to happen. There's incidents where some Yankee soldiers deserted. He said, "I enlisted to fight for the Union. I did not come here to the hot Mississippi summer to free the slaves. I'm going home." And so it's quite a wide response.
The question from before that came in that we asked was from Kevin Pritchett, publisher of the Madison Journal in Tallulah, near Milliken's Bend. So I thought,
right.
thank you for
Shout out to you.
letting us know.